G'day, this is Scribble coming to you from MSEM Custom Magic format. Today I am playing against Herzi. I am on white-blue activated ability control, and Herzi is on Jund Heart Attack, which is a control deck featuring around Heart of Zadina as a mana engine with a lot of differently named lands to be able to pump a lot of mana into their spells. So I'm on the higher seed. This is the quarterfinal match, which means I get to choose whether I'm on the play or the draw. I'm going to pick play. So this is a pretty nice hand. 2 engines, things to do on the early turn, enough lands. Having a look at Herzi's list, they have probably a few ways of dealing with my enchantment engines. So they've got an Altan Surveyor, an Ardi, 4 Pithwilts, Singularity's Grasp, and Rot. So they have a lot of ways of handling my engines. So that might be a reason to hold off on them until I can hold up some counter magic. Though Terraformer's Globe will mean I get to trigger them immediately, which is nice. I do also have 3 fetch lands in my hand, so I can trigger a Spiritual Guidance twice before my opponent gets a chance of removing it with Sorcery Speed removal. So just holding up mana with the Portal Fracture. I don't expect Herzi to have many proactive plays in the early game that I'd be using Portal Fracture on, so that's mostly going to be a later game counterspell. It being a hard counter once I have Wanderlust, so 4 differently named lands, is nice because it means I can hit things like Pithwilt, cheap interaction, even if my opponent has mana up. Okay, so since I have 5 lands all up, I am going to crack the land early rather than try to keep a high land density in my deck. Third Spiritual Guidance is something. So having a look at Herzi's list, what are the things that they could cast at 3 mana that I would want to hold counterspells up for? They have an Intrepid, so 2 of those, an Ardi, and 3 Valeries. I think I am mostly okay with resolving any of those, so I think I'm happy to get the Spiritual Guidance down now. Though actually Magnetic Torrent would be my first ability activation this turn, which means I would not get a Spiritual Guidance trigger off of the Terraformer's Globe, so in that case I'm actually going to not crack it this turn. Seeing as my opponent could end step Pithwilt to destroy the Spiritual Guidance before I get a chance of triggering Spiritual Guidance. Okay, I think because I've committed this far to holding up counter magic, I am just going to wait until I hit the 5th land so I can deploy Spiritual Guidance and then Portal Fracture. Okay, there's going to be a lot of passing in this game. Okay, Alratha is something for me to use 6 mana on. So once I have 6 mana, I can spend 3 on Spiritual Guidance, spend the remaining 3 on Alratha. And I think just because I'm still not running out of land drops, I'm going to opt to play that tapped now and hold the Guidance for another turn. Okay, so I'm going to jam a Spiritual Guidance at this point. Playing another fetch land untapped first so that I can represent a counterspell when my opponent goes to interact with this. Because my opponent has a full hand of cards and I have another 2 Spiritual Guidance, I don't mind that they are 2-for-1ing themselves here and I don't feel the need to Portal Fracture here. So I'm happy to let this Spiritual Guidance go. Just going to get any dual land here. So I think here I could play Embodied Soul, which is another target that my opponent would have to use Remover on. And I think I like doing that and holding up the Portal Fracture. Though I could just rely on Alratha, start generating clues, pressure my opponent to have to start doing something. So at the moment, any of my opponent's 3-drop engines do miss Portal Fracture. Opponent has enough mana to be able to pay for that tax. Okay, opponent is going to start going for it at this point. So there's not anything I can do to answer this. It looks like my opponent is probably going to sacrifice a land and search for Heart of Zadina. Just to have a look quickly at what mana sinks they have. Study's Pass is a way of recurring a bunch of cards from their graveyard. Singularity's Grasp is a mana sink but doesn't hurt me too much if I don't have a wide board. Inner Endeavor they can sink a bunch of mana into, though I don't have many targets for it. Spark New Life returns a bunch of lands from their graveyard. Yeah, they don't have too many proactive ways of spending all the mana that they would get from Heart of the Zadina, so I think I'm okay with this at the moment. It's worth noting that now Portal Fracture is not really going to be able to tax anything effectively because of Heart of Zadina, so it is only hitting 2 mana spells at this point. Here we'll get our other untapped dual land in Pool of Light. Okay, Event Horizon is a proactive way of being able to hit Artie. So if I want a Spiritual Guidance here as well, I will only have 1 mana up. It would also mean that if my opponent removes any of my stuff in response to Event Horizon, it would fizzle. So I think at this point I would actually prefer get Embodied Soul and Terraformer's Globe out, just so that my Event Horizon is a bit more insulated, and it also means I can hold up Portal Fracture. So that's 1 trigger for Embodied Soul. My opponent doesn't have a lot of creatures, so most of these keywords don't matter, so in that case I'm going to pick Lifelink for my upgrade. That is the 4th Spiritual Guidance, which is a bit silly. Okay, so I am going to pass here and then go to Event Horizon on my opponent's upkeep step, just to see if they have any end step shenanigans. So opponent would need to be able to remove 2 of my non-lane permanents in order to fizzle this. I don't think they can do that with my Portal Fracture up. So they are going for 1 Pithwilt here. At instant speed, they only have single target ways of removing things. It seems like it would need to be another Pithwilt in order for them to fizzle Event Horizon. Though I think I am going to fight over this Embodied Soul. Okay, so opponent is casting an 8 mana Spark New Life. They have got 5 lands in their graveyard with which they are going to recur here, which is quite scary. Have to let that resolve. This being instant speed does make it quite difficult for me to answer with counter magic, especially because my counter magic is mostly taxing. So I can gain a bunch of life here with my Spiritual Guidances and Embodied Soul. Opponent will have 6 mana up, so they may be able to interact with something. They may also just have another play now. Okay, 2 standard unstable. Opponent gaining 14 life. I'm not too threatened by this. I think I have possibly a better ability to go late than my opponent here. Okay, we have a Midnight Drury, so this can start getting chump blockers, and I think that's probably better at this point than deploying 2 Spiritual Guidances. Though, my opponent doesn't have their standard unassailable in play yet, so I don't need the blockers at the moment. Okay, so I think I am going to go for the double Spiritual Guidance here. Okay, so we did draw an untapped land. So I can hold up Out of Body Experience, or I can just attack with Embodied Soul, and my opponent's only 1 mana removal only does 3 damage, so this will survive that. It also means I can hold Terraformer's Globe up in my opponent's turn to be able to trigger Spiritual Guidances there, so that's what I will do here. So it looks like my opponent has 20 mana from the Heart of Zadina, so if they do have another Spark New Life, I am just dead. Okay, opponent going to recur that. Let me just recount to make sure. So Heart of Zadina press adds 11 mana. Yes, so it is 20 mana, dealing 18 damage. Globe with 2 active true guidance triggers is not going to save me there, unfortunately, so well played, Herzi. So, I believe my counter spells are probably coming in here, though Spell Pierce may not be all that good here. My opponent probably does have to respect it though, so it just being in my sideboard is helpful. Still the Pandemonium's definitely coming in. Shikai's Readout could be nice, seeing as my opponent has 2 stand-up unassailables, 3 Valeries, and Study Past as ways of recurring things. So it doesn't look like their sideboard is immensely impactful in this game. Out of Body Experience I think probably comes out. My opponent only has 1 creature, and their creatures that they can get from stand unassailable can be blocked by my 1/1s. Henley's not incredible here, so I might remove one of them. It is fine against my opponent's 3 mana Planeswalkers, and I don't think Shikai's Readout is really better than Hemley here. Though I do like drawing lands in this matchup, so I think I will swap one of them. Okay, that is a 1-land hand with only a tap land. Don't think I can keep this. That is another 1-land hand, but this one does have a Terraformer's Globe to try and cantrip me out of it. Could also begin with Embodied Soul, and then Terraformer's Globe turn 2 to trigger Embodied Soul. I think here I have to put back a Sinkhole. My opponent just has so much mana that it very quickly becomes useless. Okay, that is a land, thankfully. So I think I'm happy keeping up Cosmic Sinkhole here, where I don't need to keep up Still the Pandemonium. No third land yet, so we're hoping. Okay, there is my third land. It is tapped, but that is okay. Alright, fourth land is great. I could Intrepid here, but then my only counterspell that I'm holding up is Cosmic Sinkhole, and I don't need Intrepid right now to hit my land drop this turn, so I think I am content to pass again, and then Intrepid once I run out of land. Okay, so we're out of lands now, so I think I am happy to play Intrepid here, otherwise I'm not doing anything. So again, the second keyword on Embodied Soul not mattering too much. So I could get Alratha here so that I have something to do each turn. That would mean if I want to keep up Still the Pandemonium this turn, that I would need to play it untapped and give my opponent a clue. Alternatively, I could get Monument of Queens as another thing for me to be able to do. At the moment I don't have anything to spend mana on for Heart of Zadina, which makes me a bit less interested in that. Because none of these options are incredible, I think I'm actually interested in getting Lotus Barons as an untapped way for me to be able to answer my opponent's Heart of Zadina, which is going to be stronger than my Heart of Zadina. Terraformer's Globe, meaning that I can cast Still the Pandemonium if my opponent goes for a non-creature spell. Looks like it might be a Pithquilt coming out for the Intrepid. Oh, hitting the Embodied Soul instead. I am okay with that. Okay, opponent going for Valerie. In terms of non-creatures in their graveyard, they only have Pithquilt, which they would be able to... no, they wouldn't be able to cast right now based on the way they tapped. They could be using the +1 to try and play another 3-mana spell here. I think I am interested in going for the Still the Pandemonium here. Oh, it's hard to say. Yeah, I think I have to. Otherwise I'm not guaranteeing that I'm doing anything with my mana. The clue also means my event horizon in the future will be better. Okay, we have a Shikai's readout, but the things in my opponent's graveyard at the moment are not incredible targets unless my opponent goes for a Spark New Life. I think there aren't too many advantages to playing it right now when I don't have anything to spend my mana on, so I think I'm okay to hold on to that. Animating Intrepid, since my opponent doesn't have anything that they can super efficiently kill it with. Okay, opponent going for a retire on the Intrepid. I think I would like to protect it. Not protecting it also means my event horizon becomes worse. Okay, opponent going for a Tally's Cancel, so tutoring something and then adding a bunch of mana. I could crack the clue in response, but then if they search a 3-drop, I can't answer it with event horizon, so I think I am not going to try and draw into a counterspell for this. Okay, opponent does have an Ardi here, so they could sacrifice a land and get a Heart of Zadina, but I have Lotus Barons, which answers that. They could destroy my Intrepid, but that's not the worst. Does ramp me. Okay, so interestingly, I can actually animate Intrepid to fizzle this ability. Okay, well that worked out nicely for me. And here I am going to crack the clue. Alright, so there is a Mirror Gate, so I can name Heart of Zadina with that, which is quite nice. Hemley not doing a lot for me here. I could shuffle away some lands. So naming Heart of Zadina here. I assume my opponent's going to name one of their colours, and we share no colours, so I think I am inclined to name blue here. I think I am interested in playing Hemley here and trying to dig for something a bit better. Since the Shikai's is still helpful in case my opponent has a Spark New Life, I think I'm only going to shuffle away the Plains. Okay, drawn into another land, but that is okay. Okay, opponent has their own Mirror Gate. They, I don't think they can name anything too bad. They are probably going to name either Alratha or Monument of Queens. Yep, so that is a Monument of Queens naming. I'll just name white here, just for a bit of balance on my end if I do name the monument, if I do draw the monument. Okay, opponent does have a stand unassailable, which I can hit with Shikai's readout, though I can always event horizon it once it comes back. My opponent is able to destroy my Mirror Gate with a future Artie. No, that's a lie, because they only have one Artie. Do they have any other ways of destroying my Mirror Bait? They do have their own Lotus Barons, so for that reason I am interested in keeping my Lotus Barons, and I don't feel the need to Shikai's read out the stand unassailable just yet. Right, Ajani Enlightened is real nice. So let's have a quick look and see what mana values my opponent have how ways of destroying Ajani. So Rot doesn't do it. Pithwilt can do it if my opponent casts a red spell. Spark New Life can do it. Seems like it's just those, which makes me want to keep it on even, which is nice because I do want to draw a card with Ajani anyway. I am going to crack the Wayfarers rather than shuffle it away with Hemley, now that I have a way of drawing more cards. Alright, no counter magic, but it is another Event Horizon. Can shuffle away the planes and try and get some counter magic, though I think I prefer being able to remove something with Hemley, if that comes up. Alright, opponent has a Prying Inquiry, nothing I can do about that. And taking an Event Horizon when I have another one is not the worst. Alright, nothing I need to do on my end step. Alright, Cosmic Sinkhole is counter magic. Opponent has a bunch of mana up, but between my lands I have green mana, red, white, blue. I can Sinkhole for 4. Okay, opponent digging for an answer with the clue. Alright, going to Ajani 0 again before playing a land in case I draw something a bit better than the plains. That is a Monument of Queens, so that gives me black mana, and then alongside the Terraformer's Globe I have 5 colors of mana for Cosmic Sinkhole. Okay, opponent is going for a Rot here. Their only copy of it. So I can go for Cosmic Sinkhole and Portal Fracture. 1, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. I think that is worthwhile here because it seems like they don't have a great way of dealing with Intrepid at the moment. That would be black, green, white, blue, red on the island. Great, so that taps them out, and now Portal Fracture will get the Rot. Alright, Midnight Drury, finally an engine for my activated abilities. Playing that first before I activate anything. I think I am going to continue using the Ajani 0. Great, that is another counterspell and a backup Ajani. Have not played a land yet this turn. Okay, opponent going for the Tali's Council. There is not anything I can do about that with Portal Fracture, so that gets through. Okay, opponent going for a Singularity's Grasp. X equals 3, which will destroy everything except for Ajani and Hemley. Keeping up 4 mana, so there's nothing I can do with Portal Fracture here. In response, I can go for the Midnight Drury activation, which taps me out of counter magic, but I think that's okay. Give it like an Event Horizon something or Hemley something next turn. Okay, letting that resolve. That is an Alratha as a utility land that's not named by a Mirror Gate. And I think this might be a good turn not to use the Ajani 0. If I go for its +1, then I can untap the Alratha, draw a card without my opponent drawing one. Though I do want to draw into my enchantment engines, so I think I'm going to continue going for the 0. Yep, nothing else that I can do here. Currently Cosmic Sinkhole without a Terraformer's Globe can counter for 4 mana. It looks like we're back in our classic control mirror, Passing War. Alright, Spiritual Guidance is nice. I can protect that from most removal as well. Okay, and especially now that I'm at 7 lands, 7 cards in hand, the Ajani +1 is seeming a lot nicer. Okay, opponent going to return a Tali's Council. I think this is probably the best time to use Shikai's readout. I can hit the Tali's Council and Standard Assailable. Also gets cards out of my hand to make my future card draw a bit better. Okay, opponent does have a Valerie Creepak here. Returning a Valerie with their Inapraxias. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana up. So unless I want to use both Cosmic Sinkhole and Portal Fracture on that, I can't counter it. So my opponent could recur Tali's Council, Singularity's Grasp, Rot, all manner of things. But I think that is okay. I can answer it with the Event Horizon, and I do keep my Ajani. Okay, opponent has an Intrepid, so they could be tutoring up a Lotus Barons here. Heart of Zedina doesn't do anything for them here because Mirror Gate. Can't counter that, so I'm going to let that go. Playing the Intrepid here means they're most likely not going to play Valerie into Rot. Okay, opponent going for their own Lotus Barons. They have already played a land this turn, so they can't destroy my Mirror Gate this turn. Alright, Auto Module is really nice once my opponent doesn't have access to Rot or Singularity's Grasp. So I think here now, again because I have 7 cards in hand, I'm just going to try and start dumping these before I draw, and then cracking the clue. Okay, again really digging for some more engines here. So if I do play Auto Module, my opponent would need to sink 1, 2, 3 mana for Valerie, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana to be able to destroy it with Singularity's Grasp. Though I have nothing to use Auto Module for at the moment except for the 1/1s, and that makes my opponent going for a Rot a lot nicer, and that is more difficult to tax because it's cheaper. So I think I'm keeping Auto Module until my opponent has either played something that I can exile or has used up the Valerie from that. Okay, opponent going for another Intrepid, which I'm not going to try and fight over to counter. I imagine they are tutoring for a Heart of Zedina here. Yep, there we go. Again, going to Event Horizon the Intrepid. I think my opponent is not likely to go for one of their sweepers until I have a Midnight Jury out, so I think I should just keep trying to draw into that. Not looking great. Wonder if I am going to end up decking myself here. Worthwhile noting that my Ocean Monasteries no longer have anything to fetch, so they are just triggers for Spiritual Guidance at this point. Okay, that is a Spark New Life that I can't do anything about, so we'll take that damage. Opponent has a bit of a loop here with Hall of Random Access Memories and Spark New Life, so that is pretty nice, and that is some availability that I am not sure I'm able to do anything about. For that reason, I am just going to try and dig faster. There is finally a Midnight Jury. Okay, Shikai's readout is nice, because if my opponent goes to crack the Hall of Random Access Memories to return Spark of New Life, I can hit that in response. So I'm going to deploy all of my enchantment engines before activating any abilities. I think at this point, I don't need to be activating Alratha all that much, so I think I would rather just keep my mana up so my opponent can't be doing too much on my end step. Do have my own Heart of Zedina now, though I don't have really anything to put mana into it, unlike my opponent. I'm holding off on discard here in case my opponent does have something to use on my end step, which it seems like they do. Okay, going for the Lotus Barons on my Mirror Gate as expected. So they do have enough mana to be able to crack the Hall of Random Access Memories in response if I were to target with my Lotus Barons. And they don't currently have their Heart of Zedina in play, so I don't have a reason to not let this go. Okay, opponent is recurring the Spark New Life. So I could Shikai's read out that, but I think since they only have one Hall of Random Access Memories and they have multiple Spark of New Lives, I do wonder if I should wait to try and exile the Hall instead. Though I think I do need to fight over the Spark of New Life, because another one is probably going to get me. So I think here I'm going to hit the Rot as well. Okay, so it doesn't seem to be working to be able to target my opponent's graveyard. And pitching the 2 Ocean Monasteries here. I do need to start pushing for lethal soon because these Spiritual Guidances are going to kill me. Not too many cards left in my deck to draw. Okay, opponent with the Valerie. Can't do anything about that, so that goes through. I assume that will be returning Singularity's Grasp. And my opponent does have a Heart of Zedina in hand, so I'm not going to be able to counter that. Thankfully no Spark New Life in my opponent's graveyard for them to recur, because I think that would probably be lethal at this point. Oh, my opponent and 2 spectators all disconnected from the game at the same time. Wonder if that's a server thing or a country-specific thing. I know Ricky, as one of the spectators, is also Canadian, so maybe it's a Canada thing. Just in case this is a server thing, I am just going to open all the tabs and take a screenshot just so we can rebuild our game's progress if we do go down. Alright, seems like they're back after a couple attempts. Alright, opponent going for the mana with Valerie, who's not what I expected. Though I guess that does make something uncounterable if they wanted to go for that. Alright, so I could go for the order module in my turn, save the event horizon. My opponent does have more Valeries, but I don't think order module is likely to hit anything else without being vulnerable to a sweeper effect, so I think I should just have to go for it now at this point. Just going to go for any activated ability here. I forgot that I had hard counters in my deck. Okay, that is really nice to see. That does make me think that actually I want to spend my mana on the event horizon, just so I'm not tapping out too much with order module to play it and use a sub-module on the same turn. Okay, and all the other stuff I could do is counter spells, so not using that right now. So if I go for the order module, I'm actually going to undo the land play. Because I think I actually want to make the spirits and use the pump ability here. So that's 12 white mana. Spending another 3 mana to make another 3 1/1s. I actively don't want to play this other spiritual guidance. I don't have anything else to spend my mana on at the moment. Interestingly, I could go for the Hemley and try to dig for more Still the Pandemoniums. Yes, I've only seen 2 of them, so there are another 2 in my deck. I think that is what I'm going to go for at this point. Putting away definitely a Spiritual Guidance, and probably the other Ajani as well. Okay, no Still the Pandemonium, but I do have a Midnight Jury, and I'll just plus the Ajani for some extra mana. Don't want to give my opponent more cards at this point. Okay, opponent going for a Sweeper here. I don't think that is worth countering, because I can rebuild my board state quite quickly. Right, opponent passing without doing anything, so I am just going to activate Aratha for the enchantments, without ever intending to use the glue. Alright, I don't want to use these Terraformers globes. I can shuffle them away with Hemley. Just going to go straight to attack and wait to trigger my enchantments post-combat in case my opponent has another sweeper effect, but I don't believe they run another one of those. So deploying the Pool of Light, going to play another Hemley and just shuffle away these Terraformers globes. Alright, that is another Still a Pandemonium. So I think at this point I am done with activating abilities. I have lethal next turn, discarding my 3 lands to hand size. Actually forgot to use my Ajani there, but I don't think it matters. Been a long game. And we're only in game 2, so if this goes to game 3, we might be starting to get a bit fatigued. Okay, opponent going for a Tali's Council. I think I'm okay with... this because I can just counter whatever they tutor for. The only creature they could tutor for is an Altan Surveyor, which is a 2-drop, which is a hard counter option for Portal Fracture. Okay, opponent going for a Stand Unassailable from their hand. This gives them some extra time, means I don't have lethal next turn. I can double Portal Fracture this, and then still have 2 Still the Pandemoniums available, so I think that's what I'm going to do here. That is a good reason to have countered the Tali's Council, to avoid giving them access to a flashback threat. Okay, I'm gonna not go for any abilities here, I think. This would draw me 2 cards, give me another 4/4 worth of bodies. Just double checking, there's nothing in my opponent's graveyard that they can use right now. They can only have 1 instant speed spell, which still the Pandemonium will be able to answer. There is my last Still the Pandemonium. Alright, we're going to game 3, an hour and a half in. Okay, on the draw, Spell Pierce is a potential consideration just for the early game. Shikai's readout performed better than I thought it would in this game, so I partly want to bring in the extra 2 copies here. Though having a look at the deck, there's not a lot that is really worse than it at this point, and I don't really want to play 28 lands or cut my fixing, so I think I'm going to just run it back here. Alright, 3 lands, Terraformers Globe, Cosmic Sinkhole. This all looks pretty good to me. A few more tap lands than I would like to see. Okay, that is something. So there aren't too many 2-mana plays that I'm all that concerned about. It's really only Prying Inquiry, though my opponent does 4 of those, so maybe holding up the Sinkhole is worthwhile. I think I am going to hold it up in this case, and I can always Terraformers Globe the next turn. Okay, no Prying Inquiry. Okay, I don't have any onboard interaction, so I really don't want to tap out of Cosmic Sinkhole. And I'm not in a rush to get the Spiritual Guidance out, so I think here is a fine time to play out my tap land. Okay, opponent does get the Prying Inquiry around Cosmic Sinkhole mana. Not in a rush for the turn 2, seeing as this is a control mirror, so smart playing there. I imagine we're going to see either Cosmic Sinkhole, Spiritual Guidance, or Ajani taken, depending on what else is in my opponent's hand that they can use to answer my other cards. So Sinkhole is going here, means maybe my opponent has some onboard interaction. Okay, if I'm planning on using Spiritual Guidance next turn, then I should fetch now, but that would mean I'm not going to get trigger from Spiritual Guidance. So I think I'm just going to wait to see what I draw. Auto Module is nice for later. Alright, nothing I can spend my mana on here at instant speed, and my opponent knows most of my hand. So I think I'm fine to tap out for the Soul and the Terraformers Globe here. Just going to search for an island to make my future plays a bit better. Can't pick off the Globe before playing Nebula in case there is a different land that I want to play first. Of which there is not. So just a Mirror Gate here. So going to name white here, seeing as I have already got 3 blue sources. Opponent is also naming white. That is fine with me. That is a bit of an indication that they don't have a Heart of Zedina in their hand at the moment. Okay, opponent shooting for an Artie, destroying my Embodied Soul. I can't pull the same trick here of animating it in response, so I'm going to let that go and search for a basic land. Okay, I have a fetch land and a Terraformers Globe for 2 ways of triggering Spiritual Guidance. I could go for the Auto Module on Artie, but my opponent has a lot of ways of dealing with enchantments, so I don't love that. So I think I'm just going to play the Spiritual Guidance and try and dig into a counterspell maybe. Alright, Lotus Baron's not bad. I suppose going for the Spirits on the Auto Module wasn't bad here as a way of attacking into Artie. Though I would like to have Spiritual Guidance in play before doing that, I think. Okay, opponent going for the Pithwilt, so I'm going to get my extra draw off of that before it goes. Do we draw a counterspell? We do not, but we get another enchantment engine. Okay, looks like my opponent and everyone has crashed again. It's just not the day for it today. Okay, opponent getting the Lotus Baron instead of Heart of Zedina. Obviously, because I have Mirror Gate in play. Right, Silver Pandemonium is real nice. So here I can go for Midnight Jury into Ajani, untap 2 lands, trigger Midnight Jury, and then play Still the Pandemonium, which means Ajani is protected from Artie, and if Artie wants to destroy Midnight Jury, Artie is also going to go. So I don't want to make my Lotus Barons vulnerable, I think. So here I am going to play out the Nebula. I'm not super concerned about dying, especially with Ajani about to come out. So we'll name 3 colors here. So I'm going to play Ajani first because that's more insulated from removal than Midnight Jury. Cool, not going to activate that just yet. Waiting to get the Midnight Jury out first. And now going for the Ajani +1. Alright, opponent destroying my Mirror Gate. So they might be going for Heart of Zedina this turn. In which case they would have 8 mana, I believe, with Heart of Zedina. Heart math is hard. So Artie can +1 get out of range from 2 spirits, but I could play Order Module to give them all +1/+1 and kill Artie. Okay, with this sequencing, I think my opponent has access to 9 mana this turn. Okay, opponent with a Tali's Council. I think I am supposed to let that go and counter what they tutor for, because they may have something else in their hand. Though, if I let this resolve, they would have enough mana to sink into Heart of Zedina, which they currently do not. So I think I'm actually supposed to still the Tali's Council. Okay, so my opponent has enough mana open for a Riademia Charm. So I don't think I want to go for the Order Module +1/+1 plan. I almost certainly want to use Lotus Barons on the Heart of Zedina this turn. I'm not planning on cracking the clue this turn, so I think I am just going to attack first. Though actually, now that I think about it, if I Lotus Barons the Heart of Zedina, my opponent does actually run 2 of those, so they could tutor another one with Artie. So I think instead, I may want to just play the Intrepid and tutor for my own Heart of Zedina. Although I could go for Alratha. Though Midnight Drury is not that much more expensive to get me a card draw than Alratha is, so I think actually Heart of Zedina is better while I have a Midnight Drury out. Oh, seems like I'm lagging now. At the same time as my opponent and everyone else has disconnected again, so it seems like it might be a server-wide thing. Alright, opponent is back, so let's try and continue. I don't think I'm going to spend mana from Heart of Zedina this turn. So if I untap 2 lands, I will have enough mana and colors to use Midnight Drury on my opponent's turn. I think that's all I'm going for at this point. Yeah, going to save the Lotus Barons until my opponent doesn't have a way of tutoring for another Heart of Zedina. Playing the Intrepid may encourage my opponent to go for a Sweeper, in which case Order Module is a bit better afterwards. Sweeper would also handle their Artie. Okay, looks like my opponent's going for a big turn here. Pumping mana into Heart of Zedina. They could sacrifice the heart to get another heart with Artie. Looks like that may be what they're doing. Okay, opponent does have the Rot here, so that will destroy their own Artie. So I have 6 differently named lands, so I have 8 mana total, so I can use Midnight Drury and the Clue here. Okay, Event Horizon is not really going to be able to hit anything post-Rot, so I think I should just dump my mana into Midnight Drury, and then that resolves. Alright, still the Pandemonium is going to be nice following this turn. I can maybe deploy Order Module, and then protect it with Still. Being able to destroy the second Heart of Zedina is also nice, while I do also have my own. So thinking about what my opponent could have, they would have 7 mana if they sink their current black mana into Heart of Zedina. They could use a Spark New Life for 5, which would be quite difficult to get back from, I think, if my opponent has any kind of value in their hand. So I think I'm hoping not to see that. Besides that, there's not too much that I think I'm that concerned about here. Valerie could also be good. Recurring something from their yard. Though the timing window on Valerie means I can play around it to some extent. Opponent choosing to add black mana instead of any other color makes me think that maybe they have an Inapraxia's Endeavor as well. There is more black mana here. It seems like that might be what they're going for. Recurring and Artie, yep, that's the one. And then I assume they're exiling my graveyard. I don't think my graveyard actually matters at all for my deck. Opponent does have 3 mana, but they can't spend it on Artie. Okay, so if I play Lotus Barons, I'll have 7 unique land names. So 7 mana, pump 2 into the Lotus Barons, have another 5. Spend all that on Order Module. I think that's what I'm doing no matter what. So adding 7 white, destroying Heart of Zedina, and going for the Order Module here. So am I untapping a land with Eljani, or am I drawing here? I think first I'm just going to cantrip with Terraformer's Grove, see if that gives me any information. Set it Tundra, already played a land this turn. If I go for the draw, I'll only have 3 mana to use on my opponent's turn, so I can really only go for the Still the Pandemonium. Whereas if I untap Heart of Zedina, I can also crack the Clue and cast Event Horizon. I don't need to use Unity at the moment, so I think I'm just going to let that mana fade and go to my opponent's turn. Okay, opponent going for Spark New Life. I assume they're holding mana up for a Portal Fracture. They can't play Artie unless they have another land in hand. And this would let them recur a Heart of Zadina, which I don't think I can let them do. So here, I think I'm going to have to use still the Pandemonium. Event Horizon can always handle an Artie afterwards, so that's not too bad. And Artie, while being able to handle auto modules, Anthem can't handle the spirits. Okay, Altan Surveyor. So opponent can destroy an artifact or enchant with mana value 3 or less, which I don't have. And then none of the other options matter against my deck. Okay, opponent is shuffling their own graveyard. That's interesting. Gives them access to their win cons again. I think that's okay though. So, because my hand has pretty much nothing at the moment, I think I am going to go for the Ajani 0, try and dig into some counter spells, or at least some kind of engine. There is a counter spell, so that's nice. So here, I think I'm just going to go for the Auto Module Duddle activation. I think just trying to end the game at this point is probably my best bet. My opponent is 2 turns from dying. Nothing else I can do here. I think if my opponent goes for Artie, I am not going to counter it. Though now that I think about it, if they do destroy Auto Module, they get their Altan Surveyor back as the blocker, which would mean I have to use Event Horizon on the Altan Surveyor to get in with my 1/1, so I actually think I am going to spend the Still the Pandemonium here. If my opponent has a Rot, it can't hit Auto Module. If they have a Singularity's Grasp, that also can't hit it. A Bloodstained Calamity. Okay, that does 2 damage to Ajani as well. Leave my opponent with only 1 card in hand isn't too bad. I could draw into a Cosmic Sinkhole here with the clue, so no reason not to go for that. Didn't get it, so that is fine. Alright, there is my enchantment engine at last. So I think at this point I'm not using Ajani Enlightens 0 anymore, we're just going to plus. Alright, plussing Ajani, triggering Spiritual Guidance. That is a Cosmic Sinkhole, nice to see. There is a consideration for the Hemley, just to shuffle away some lands. I think I am... that would leave me with the ability to only Sinkhole for 2 colors, so actually I think I am not supposed to go for that there. Yeah, I think the longer that I do nothing while I have Spiritual Guidance out, the better it is for me, especially with my opponent only having 2 cards in hand at this point. Okay, going for the Pithwelt. So I can't answer that with Cosmic Sinkhole, so I'm going to let that go. And nothing I can spend my mana on at instant speed. There's a Shikai's Readout, which is going to be nice to save for later. So at this point, I'm just going to Hemley, shuffle a bunch of things away, trying to dig into some engines, like the 2 lands and the Ajani. Drawing into 3 lands, fantastic. I think I'm just going to re-roll it again. Alright, much better. 3 fantastic cards. So, Monument of Queens, Midnight Jury as ways of ending the game, Portal Fracture as a mostly hard counter against my opponent's interaction, and I am just going to untap lands at this point with Ajani, because I can always just pump that into Midnight Jury. So Heart of Zadina adds 9 mana, so I could theoretically activate Midnight Jury twice in a turn as well, though it might be more worthwhile sinking the mana into Monument of Queens. Just checking if they have any instant speed ways of dealing with Monument of Queens. Void Flare and Spark New Life can. Enopraxia's Endeavor can. Retire and Enter Mephisto's Date can, but all those are answerable with Portal Fracture. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tap out here for the final Monument. My opponent only having 1 land at the bin means that's actually okay if they do get to Spark New Life. I did miss my Midnight Jury trigger, but I think that's okay. So just to get the trigger on my turn, and so that Ajani has something to untap, I am going to sink this mana into Monument now. Alright, I will stop there. I should have enough mana to be able to hit my opponent for lethal with Monument of Queens next turn, and if not, with the 2 spirits that I'll have. Right, sorcery speed in Apraxia Zediva for Artie, theoretically to hit the monument. I am going to have to portal fracture that, and then going again with monument. I believe this should be lethal, but don't want to count my ducks until they hatch. This was theoretically not the best sequencing. Could have got an extra mana from Heart of Zedina. Alright, just because why not, I am going to get the Spiritual Guidance out first. Yep, alright, Herzi revealing their hand. I assume that means they're conceding the fact. But until they see GG, I will continue going. Alright, Spark can kill a single spirit, so we're going to get Monument to 11. May as well go to 12. Hosing me, making me go through the motions to get the lethal, I respect. Yeah, it looks like I actually had lethal a while ago, and my activations were just suboptimal. That is the pain of not being used to using a Heart of Zedina deck. Good game. Thanks for the game, Herzi. That was quite an interesting matchup. Very grindy with my opponent having a lot of graveyard recursion. Normally I would think that white blue control is favoured against Jund control, but the amount of recursion that Herzi is packing here definitely made that less the case. Seems like the Pandemonium's really made a big difference here. Nothing else particularly helping from my sideboard, so it seems like it was just a combination of that, having hard counters against my opponent's recursion and other engines, and I suppose just some good drawing luck. So thanks for the game, Herzi. I'll see you next time in the semi-finals match. See ya.